You are now tuned in to DameSmiff.
Good morning and welcome to episode 7 of Musician Talks with DameSmiff. And I'm here today to talk to you guys about honing your craft as an artist and what that means and what kind of pitfalls you need to look out for when you are honing your craft in your musical and artistic career. So let's discuss what is honing your craft. For example, just to jump right into it, before I start that, let me do this first. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe, and share this video with anybody who you think is an artist, who you support as an artist, or anybody who's looking to become an artist and wants some help. Or if you just want to be a part of the discussion and give your opinion on certain things that I'm talking about, feel free to jump in the comments and share and like and subscribe, like I said. But anyway, moving forward, what is honing your craft? So I'll speak to it from a musician standpoint. So for a musician, there's a lot of ways you can develop a craft, but what makes it unique to you and what makes it something that you can turn into a living, a living or a lifestyle, if you will. And so, the first obvious role to me is instrumentalists. Like, for example, I play piano, I can play brass, percussion, and things like that. But to hone a craft, I've decided to focus on piano, but not necessarily the instrument of piano. I prefer to call myself a producer. So what I try to understand about the piano is not the extent of the instrument's ability, but what I can get from its utility as an instrument, as a tool, in a sense. So I have a catalog of music that I've written and recorded myself, and most of it has come from being in front of the piano. I've used horns and drums and guitars and things like that, but most of it comes from the utility I get from using a keyboard. Now, with that, the way I hone that is making sure that my efficiency is positive and that my accuracy is getting improved on. And the last thing is just to make sure that I'm kind of like a muscle, making sure I'm working the muscle and not developing atrophy and, losing my skills over time by not using the tools that I have in front of me. So, the big thing is when honing your craft is to make sure, like I said in a previous episode, to make sure you have an environment to where you can develop and hone your craft, which I referred to as a creative space in my previous episodes. And when you are developing a creative space, again, I said to make sure you have it to be goal oriented and to look at it as a sacred place like that. So for me, in my creative spaces, I like to make sure there's a piano nearby, and that allows me to flush out new ideas, flush out new techniques, and work on techniques that I have been working on but need to improve on. And so, like I said, my craft isn't to be a piano player, but to be a songwriter, and I use the piano to do that. So there's my craft, right? Making music and songs using the keyboard, typically the digital keyboard, because I can use MIDI and different sounds and things like that to make an entire, plethora of sounds. But that's my craft, and how I hone that is to, again, stay consistent with the practice and to stay consistent with improving myself and looking for ways to improve, and not necessarily, some musicians or instrumentalists, they'll learn their real book, or they'll learn like their lesson plan and things like that, or whatever they need for their upcoming gig, and that's the extent of their craft. It's just to essentially perform, and that's amazing, especially if you are a good performer and you're honing your craft in that way. But for someone like me who isn't on the stage more than I am creating, my craft isn't in performing. So making sure I'm playing music correctly and precisely all the time, every time, isn't where my craft is going to shine. My craft will shine in the writing and the creation and the facilitation of a complete, musical piece using the tools that I have. So, with that being said, how can you hone your craft and develop a more positive effect on your musical career? Well, as I've explained, for instrumentalists, it's pretty straightforward there. As long as you keep practicing, look for improvement, and make sure you keep in your discipline, in that you're making sure that what you are focusing on is an improvement, and you're just not getting on your instrument and just jamming away at your favorite songs or whatever. But if you're not an instrumentalist, what I've explained to works for vocalists too. But if you're not an instrumentalist or a vocalist, how do you hone your craft as, say, a club promoter or an engineer, or maybe you're not so musically inclined, but you work in the music industry. So what are ways that people like that can hone and develop and make their craft better? Now, the way I look at it is the principles are similar, meaning that if you're a promoter, you should be looking on how to improve, your results as a promoter. You should also be looking for more opportunities to promote and to work that muscle, in a sense. And you should be looking on ways to make what you are currently doing well better. And the principles are there for generally everybody, but the approach is different. So what that may look like for a promoter isn't necessarily just hitting up as many people as you can to see if you can promote their event, but it may be in the sense that the events you do, they are so perfect that it's undeniable what your work ethic is. And just making sure the things you can control are within your control. The things you want to control are within your control. And I'll give you an example of that as an instrumentalist. As an instrumentalist, you can't really control, like if you're playing brass or woodwind, the weather sometimes can play an effect on your instrument. You can't control that, so you must make sure you have the proper creative space to work on your craft. If you're a vocalist, something as simple as like mental stress or even bodily stress can play a huge role in your performance as a vocalist, because you yourself, your body, your vocal cords, your long eyes, and everything, and your coordination are all a part of what makes you the voice and instrument. And things like that you can't necessarily control, but you can kind of manipulate. You can nudge a few things here and there, and it doesn't mean that you have to maintain control of everything in your craft. It's the thing you want to focus on is the adaptability you have as an artist. So for me, just to keep it on me, to keep it simple, as an instrumentalist, my adaptability doesn't come in playing as many genres as I can on this instrument. My adaptability comes in, can I create music from what's given to me in most, if not any, situation? And for the most part, that's been true for how I've been developing my craft. Like, I have in probably about 2 hard drives, just sounds and music and things that I've been working on that eventually turn into entire pieces or entire collections and albums and songs and things like that. And I'm able to do that because I maintain that I'm being consistent with flexing that musical muscle that I have, meaning that every once in a while I'll go in my hard drive and just listen to stuff I have and try to make something new out of it. Not make something new out of a complete song, but out of pieces that I have. So I may have just a drum loop somewhere. I'll bring that out, put it in front of me, listen to it a few times, maybe play around with some chords and melodies and see what I can come up with. And then I'll eventually have an entirely new song out of what pieces I had left over. And that is great for developing my craft, because there's going to come an opportunity where I have to collaborate with someone else or use someone else's sounds or their pieces and things like that. And to make a song come out of that is going to be my task at the time. And if I can't do that efficiently, positively, and essentially well enough for it to be a good song, then am I really developing a craft, or am I just doing the act of writing music, if that makes sense? So similar to how an athlete can, exercise and train all day long, if they don't compete, what's the real point of it all? Like, if you're not going to be putting your name in the rafters and things like that, or, just competing numerically, like I have the fastest run by this many milliseconds or whatever, if you're not trying to prove and perform that way, then you're not necessarily honing a craft. You're more of just developing a skill or a talent and things like that. What makes it a craft is the fact that you can utilize it in any situation that you would need it for. Being able to run the fastest, you don't need that to work at a desk, if that makes sense, But for an athlete to have the discipline to get 6-pack abs, or deadlift 250 pounds. That takes a lot of mental discipline. So you can use that mental discipline in many other ways. So what are some of the pitfalls you can run into when you are honing your craft as an artist? And these things can either knock you off your balance as an artist, or these things can kind of put you in a rut where you're doing very well, but you're not progressing in a sense. So I'll give you two examples of that. And one example could be every day you're practicing and practicing and practicing and practicing and practicing. Even maybe I've seen some musicians, they'll stream just about daily. But what that turns into typically is just this big old mosh pit of just sounds and songs and things like that no one's looking to listen to. You're not looking to perform. Nobody's trying to purchase this catalog. You're just in the basement, just jamming in a sense. And that can be a big pitfall if your idea for your musical career is one of where you're performing in front of people and you're selling records, because so the pitfall in that is you're spending more time, you're spending more time in the basement playing music and creating music than you are competing. And the competitive part comes in when you are actually trying to sell a record, because then you're competing with yourself. So if somebody bought your first single and you come to them again and they can't or don't want to buy the next single, you don't have to adapt and become the solution to that situation. You can't tell them, oh, but this is the new thing, you got to get it, it's hot. And most people aren't going to work like that, especially with their hard-earned money. So then you come into this position of, well, what do? Do I go back in the basement and just give them the next song on my hard drive? No, you have to actually hone in and figure out how you can do what you're doing improved. How can you improve on what you've been doing this whole time? And the next thing that can get you into a rut, that can knock you off balance. That's my first example, where you're just playing just to be playing and you're not progressing. But then you can get into a rut where you don't know how to improve your craft. And the rut comes in where you're doing things that are outside of your wheelhouse. You're doing things that are improper, or you're doing things for convenience and not necessarily to improve. A good example of that is typically young piano players when they get in front of the piano and they've gotten their feet wet. Maybe they've played live before, things like that. When it comes time to be challenged with playing in new genres and things like that, typically younger musicians do this. I don't typically see older people, because older people have the propensity to try to do things the proper way. But typically younger musicians, if they don't know all their keys or if they don't know all their scales, you can manipulate certain keyboards to make that easier for you. And you'll see a lot of younger keyboarders do this for the simple fact that they haven't taken the time to learn all their keys, to learn all the different basic utility that comes with playing the piano. So then when you find yourself in a situation that you can't adapt to, you're not relying on a crutch versus having the craft to be able to perform properly when you need to. And some musicians can get away with it depending on, who's looking. But again, when it comes to honing your craft, you can't hide that. There's no hiding that in any sense of the word, because the actual adaptation is going to be necessary for you to improve your craft. You can't band-aid a lot of the things you want to improve on as an artist, because you're not necessarily improving it. That'd be like if a building fell, like completely fell, and instead of cleaning up the debris, you just put guardrails around it so nobody touches it. That's kind of what you're doing. So in your city, you would still have a big mass of rubble in your city, but you're not, you just put guardrails around it. So it's kind of it's a bit of a mindset flip for some musicians. But at the end of the day, if you want to actually see improvement, then you must actually want to see results and be looking and searching for these results and these improvements. And so that's it for today. I just want to thank you guys for visiting and keeping up and making sure you're running these views up. Like I said, like, share, subscribe, and do everything in your power to support each other. And tomorrow, I'll be back at it. Today is Tuesday, right? Yeah, Tuesday. So no episode tomorrow. Episode 8 will be on Thursday. And I'll try to make that one a little longer. I'll make some notes for that one as well. But like I said, like, share, and subscribe. You can follow me on Facebook, YouTube. I game on Twitch. I'm on Instagram. I'm everywhere. Just if you're not on social media or anything like that, just Google me and you can find me. Also, you can purchase my music directly at BandCamp. I put the link in this stream below, but when I edit this and put it on YouTube for your YouTube guys, you'll see that in the description as well, and how you can follow me. And again, if you have any questions about what I'm talking about, or if you just want to join the discussion, go ahead and drop a comment below. Share it with your friends, tag me in the conversation, whatever, and feel free to let me know what you're thinking. And that's Musician Talks, and we're out.